All right, everybody, welcome to Tennis Channel Inside In, Australian Open season. I'm delighted here, Mitch Michals in the Santa Monica studios to be talking tennis with my next guest, a regular on the show, especially this time of year, from Yahoo Sports, betting analyst, expert, and all-around tennis fiend like myself, Pamela Maldonado. Pam, thank you so much for joining the show. And I was a little worried when we set this time up 10:30 on the West Coast that there would still be live tennis in Australia. But thanks for coming back on Inside In.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It is the best time of year when I love football, but it's starting to die down a little bit, which means there's so much room for tennis, which happens every week from here on out. So I'm so excited.
Yeah, I think your combination of tennis and football, you basically have it to where you don't have to worry about the letdown when football ends. You just dive right into tennis and right into Aussie, which you've long said has been your favorite tournament. And it's, I think, been strengthened in the last couple of years, especially this one, which we'll get to in a second. But you just love the madness, the chaos. And I think seeing people start of the year when we don't know what to really expect outside of the very select few brings the excitement to the sport.
Absolutely. I'll agree with that. I wouldn't say that it brings chaos. It brings more intrigue, if anything, because there's not really, I think that's what people kind of forget about tennis is there's no off season. You have football. Once it ends, you don't see it for another like 6 months. NBA, every other sport on the planet has a legitimate off season, even the PGA. You don't get that from tennis. There's like a 1 month turnaround, and it's really up to the individual player if they actually want to utilize that time, or somebody like Casper Ruud, who utilized his offseason to play exhibition matches. So he hasn't had time off. And now he's talking about maybe doing February as his off time. So it's just one of those things where, for the most part, a lot of the players come into this fresh because we haven't really seen them since the US Open, since Paris, whatever the tournament was that they last played. So it should be more true to form. This tournament has been kind of wonky. We're starting to see like a shift in changes here. And I think it's because of the conditions. We had rain delays, we had heat delays, we had the balls are different, as Novak Djokovic has pointed out. So it's just, there's a lot more variables this time around that I feel like we haven't maybe seen in the past, which has made this specific tournament, 2023 version of Australian Open, a little bit more on the wild side.
I want to, and I agree with most of that. I want to just also add that we were spoiled by so long, and I know Djokovic is still out there as a prohibitive favorite, which we will get to, but we were spoiled for so long about the top guys advancing deep into these tournaments. Obviously, Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, they were just locks. And you could even go a little further down the depths, the guys like the David Ferrers, the Joe Wilfred Songas, Monfils, that you could count to win a couple matches every time. I think we kind of took that for granted, and we're seeing now that it's not just because you have a seed and number next to your name, there is no lock. And some of these sections have just been completely blown up, maybe not chaos, but just showing the depth of the game. And as you said, how important good preparation and good health is going into a 5-set slam in the most brutal conditions.
Well, you're exactly right in that for the last few years, we have been spoiled. And I will say that until we no longer have that as an option, once Djokovic retires, once Nadal retires. But what we're seeing right now is what happened in 2022 with Carlos Alcaraz just absolutely went off. But it took Alcaraz to show other players how to be a better tennis player by adding more variety into their game, bringing in more weapons, and translating that onto the court. We're starting to see that. Well, people are now coming into the net more. Medvedev is coming into the net. This is not something that he does, but we're seeing that across the board because their players have noticed, okay, if I want to get better, if I want to be somebody at the top, Djokovic is still hanging around. I need to improve my game. So what we're seeing from Djokovic is still him, but then the rest of the field is starting to climb up to his level. And now the rest of the field is an even playing field. So it's just been a lot more competitiveness instead of so top heavy.
Alcaraz also showing, I would argue, the price you kind of have to pay. And he didn't get away scot-free too with the injury. Unfortunately, we're not seeing him here. He's understandably taking the long approach to his game, but it is tough to have anything close to the year he had, but also to stack them up and be fresh each time. So it's, we want to see him back here. Unfortunately, he's not playing no Kyrgios in this tournament. Some names missing, but the drama has just been amazing. I was going to start up until this morning with Djokovic, but I got to talk about Andy Murray first because what he's done in the last, it's, the win against Berrettini, his biggest win in a major in a long time, up from 2 sets. Then he follows that up down 2 sets, and he comes back up till 4 a.m. against the Nasti Kanakis. And the competitive spirit and everything that he has that we've known about him for so long. But the fact that he's able to still be so fit, and I'm talking to someone whose life is fitness, but that's the part that gets kind of swept under the rug, is that regardless of the ailments, the conditions, this guy shows up at every major in tip-top shape. And there's a reason why he's able to go the distance, even with his ailments. And I think that, I don't want that to go under the rug, the fact that Murray takes such good care of his body and knows what it's like to answer the bell, regardless of the circumstances.
Well, let's talk about that because he is 35 years old. He's one of the older players on tour who is still crushing. He's still trying to find his way back from his injury, which he has a metal inside his hip, and he is still being able to be competitive. Like back-to-back 5-set matches. This was the second longest match in Australian Open history. It was 5 hours and 45 minutes. For a 35-year-old with metal in his hip. Like, let's take a moment to appreciate that, because that is super hard to do in any sport, much less even more so in an individual sport as tennis, where it's just you and one other person. And you have to not only hype yourself up, you have to be your own hype man. You have to be your own trainer, because you can't really call for a personal trainer like, oh, I'm feeling a little tired, come feed me. You have to handle so many variables on your own. At 3 a.m., there was no bathroom break that Murray was complaining about. So for 5 hours and 45 minutes, it is just you and your opponent, and you have to do everything in your brain to combat all of the elements, including the crowd. So super kudos to Andy Murray. It was a fantastic match. I can't wait to watch him, to continue watching.
Well, there's a reason why, if you look back at his history, I don't know if it's a publicly known story, but he used to train when he was living in Miami with the Miami Hurricanes athletic training center, with the football players and all the athletes playing. He did some damage in the weight room. Like, for his weight class, I think he still does have his name on the board for some of the weightlifting that he's done. And the fact that is the section of his draw, and this is where we can kind of transition to the betting, it's been completely blown up. A lot of seeds out there. The only one left is Roberto Bautista Agut, who's now the favorite, and probably enough. That's who Murray gets next. But this is a real opportunity for him. And this is a real opportunity for people that like certain players, know what they're doing, see the trends, Pam, to really attack this section and see some value, which we haven't really had in a lot of these Grand Slams in men's tennis.
I'm not really one to, I like underdogs, especially when it comes to like football. I like looking at underdogs. Andy Murray will be the underdog in this position, rightfully so. And I'm not sure that I can back him. There's two parts of me when it comes to tennis: the sports bettor that's looking for value, and then the fan. I want to be a fan of Andy Murray, and I hope that he gets through Roberto Bautista Agut. But there's a big question mark looming and going forward, and it's whether Andy Murray, who has now played back-to-back 5-set matches, is going to have the stamina after 10 sets. I mean, we're talking about the second longest match in Australian Open history versus Kokkinakis, 5 hours, 45 minutes. And that's because Murray was also down in the third set 2-5, and he made this miraculous comeback. So the longest match prior was 5 hours, 53 minutes with Nadal and Djokovic. Even them, as young as they were, it still took a toll on their body in the next match after. This is Andy Murray, who's 35 years old. Does he have the legs for it, is my question mark.
The guy he's playing, Roberto Bautista Agut, came back from 5 down, kind of ran away with it, is very fit. So that's part of the issue too, is he's not playing somebody who's, afraid of these moments.
RBA's style of play, he is a backboard. So that the ball is coming back. So is Andy Murray is he mentally ready? And more importantly, is he physically ready for a potential another 5-setter? Because that's what you're going to get with RBA. Somebody who just will always return the ball, expect long rallies. I'm really interested, and I hope he gets done, but it could just be just another potential fanship viewership.
Well, regardless of what happens, he's done tremendous, winning back-to-back 5-set matches, Berrettini and Kokkinakis back-to-back. I think the key to the betting strategy, if I have this right, is just don't bet on anyone that's been on Netflix.
So far, it seems to be the case.
There's only 2 left, and we're in the 3rd round. That's crazy.
What's so funny about that is I was talking to somebody about this, and I had just finished the first 2 episodes, and I was like, and I saw the tweets about the Netflix, the curse, the documentary curse, and I was like, we'll see if it is real, if Kokkinakis goes down. And I mean, yep.
Well, there's 2 people left, and they each had struggles. Maria Sakkari and Felix Auger-Aliassime are the last ones left of the first 5 shows. So remarkable there. Crazy stuff. Pamela Maldonado here on Tennis Channel Inside In. Let's talk about Novak Djokovic, who
Okay.
won in 4 sets last night. And I wouldn't say routine, just in the sense that the fitness is never going to be doubted, but the injury,
Okay.
whenever he's open about it, will be, scrutinized.
Yes.
And he says he has issue. You could see the mobility. He wasn't hitting a lot of open stance backhands. Now, the beauty of his game is that he has different ways to beat you and can beat
Yes.
most of the players on tour in multiple ways. But I'll ask you, as someone that's followed his career with admiration and with wagering interest as well, what kind of level of concern do you have? Not next match, maybe not even the match after that, but going the distance with how he's looked and how he's admittedly addressed his injury concerns.
I had the concern for Novak Djokovic injury headed into the tournament. Normally, if I am high on Djokovic in years past, I have put anywhere between 5 to 10x units on him to win that tournament. This tournament, I did just 2 because it is a concern of this is a major. It's 2 weeks of tennis. You saw how his injury did come into play against Medvedev. Medvedev even made fun of him. and his draw, although it is fairly friendly, there is one player that gives me pause, and it's his potential quarterfinal match against Holger Rune. So who is much younger, much faster, and was the one player who took Djokovic out of his winning streak to defeat him in Paris. So because of that, it gave me pause. I needed to see, okay, let me see how he looks in the first couple of matches. Him dropping a set in his second round match doesn't give me a concern because that's kind of his MO. We've seen it where he kind of starts out a little bit slow. It was a tie break, so it's not like it was anything of a shocker. And then he went on to win the next 2 sets, 6-2, 6-0. So I'm not worried about the physicality of Djokovic. And if there was any single player on tour who knows how to take care of his body as well, as sharp, is knowledgeable, knows exactly the regimen that he needs in order to push through, it's Djokovic. That's what he's known for. I mean, this is why you see him all angles of the court, because he devotes hours and hours and hours into maintaining a specified fitness in order to get through these best of 5 matches.
Do you find him, I mean, he's a unicorn in a lot of ways, but I find it I'd say equal parts fascinating and inspiring that this guy, unlike most athletes, I worry more about the injury in like the very next match. I find that if he can just survive and play a plan B, plan C that doesn't put the tension on there, he'll play himself into better shape as these tournaments go along. 2 Australian Opens ago, his last title, he had that, I would say legendary. He had that issue in the match versus Fritz where he was breaking down. He talked about his body. By the end of that tournament, he looked fit as a fiddle. So I do think that, the draw being a little favorable early is going to be a gift to him. Not that he needs any more gifts, but the fact that he can kind of play his way maybe back into form. Because I agree, Holger Rune is the test, like quarterfinal match. That's the test. It is best of 5 though. And I know that match versus in Paris was great. Pretty much everybody, the way that match was going, the way Holger's body was going, if it goes 1 or 2 more sets, it probably wouldn't go his way. So if Djokovic can get to the quarterfinal in 80 to 90% range, I think he'll be okay. But yeah, that's going to be the thing. It's going to be Djokovic, as he said, trusting God and trusting his physio.
It does appear that the sportsbook, maybe they have some information that the rest of us don't, because pre-tournament Djokovic was -125 to win, and now he is +125.
Saw that.
I'm not at all concerned that his next matchup against Grigor Dimitrov, I'm not worried about that one. Djokovic holds a 9-1 record. The last win for Dimi was in Madrid on clay back in 2013. So for me, yes, the concern has always been getting through Holger Rune, but he's playing well right now. Also, but the problem is that, like you mentioned, this is a best of 5. So I need to see if the type of aggression that Rune had in that best of 3, it is very difficult to maintain in a best of 5. This is why we see somebody like Andy Murray down 2 sets to love and able to come back, because it becomes so much more of a mental game. And we haven't seen that from somebody who's 19 years old have to be tested in such a fashion against the number 1 player. Like, there's a reason why they're the big 3, Nadal and Djokovic, because if they're down 2 sets to love, you can guarantee that this is still going to be a 5-set, maybe even a 5-set tiebreak. Where's your mentality in that? Are you going to hold your aggression? The type of shots that you're making in the first 2 sets early on, is that going to be able to continue in a best of 5? So there's a lot of question marks. I'm really anxious to get forward to that match.
Even Nadal, when he's on his last legs, literally and figuratively, is still fighting to the very end. There's the mentality for you. One other note, and I agree. I mean, Holger Rune just becoming, doing the Alcaraz model, getting fit, getting stronger.
Mhm.
Lot to like, very special talent, former junior number one. I think Djokovic, the fourth round, if he gets Demonar, who's playing better and is the type of player that can, make you run a little bit, that could be a test.
Right.
I want to see what his level would be like in that match going into it. But yeah, maybe there is some value if you want to take, over some of these spreads, some of these sets. I mean, you can probably get value for players to take a set off Djokovic. And like we saw last night, maybe there's value for him and just, resetting, not really trying to fight all the way. It's not tanking, but it's conserving energy more than anything.
Conserving energy, yes. And this is how I describe it. This is a really good indication of how you can perceive tennis coming into every single match. Somebody like Nadal, somebody like Djokovic, they almost always start at a level 1 or 2. They want to see how little can I do and still get through. Okay, this guy is playing a little bit better than I expected. Let me up it up a notch.
Yeah.
And then, okay, this is really close. Let me just take it straight to level 5. There's not a lot of players on tour. Let's be real. There's 2 players on tour, Nadal and Djokovic, who have these levels that they can up that the rest of the field cannot.
Yeah.
So they always start lower to preserve, up it when they need to.
It's why we always say when people play these guys, you have to win the first set or you have zero chance. Like you have to get up to an early start. I think Stan's the only guy to ever really beat Djokovic, and it happened twice while losing the first set in these best of 5. So remarkable there. We'll see. I mean, this is going to be fascinating to watch. Other areas too. I mean, I'm looking at it because Nadal obviously out, and we have to have a final. We have to have people to make a run. Daniil Medvedev is playing better. He seems to have gotten some confidence back. You mentioned earlier he's coming to the net a little bit more, and I think he does love playing down in Australia, as bad as last year's final went for him. I saw -165 to kind of get through his section, and looking at the odds-on favorite to get to the final in that section of the draw. Do you see it that way? Do you see maybe more value in backing the underdogs? Where are you at with Medvedev's level heading into the stretch run here?
For Medvedev to win the Australian Open, still not interested because you still have to get through Novak Djokovic. And even with an injury, like I said, he's going to figure it out. I am interested to see how Medvedev is going to handle his next match against Sebastian Korda. I do still strongly believe that Medvedev is going to win, and likely in 4 even, but I'm interested because Korda has the style of play where he can employ his net game. And there's nothing that Medvedev hates more than having to run into the net. He likes to stay behind the baseline.
Coming around on Korda a little bit. I like that. That's good.
Well, in this matchup, it is very matchup specific. So Korda needs to bring that same tactic in order to throw Medvedev off. If he comes into the net and drops shots and slices and brings Medvedev forward, yes, he has a shot here. But if Korda gets comfortable behind the baseline and he plays a Medvedev game, Medvedev is just going to eat him up. So it's just very important to see what Korda is doing more so than it is Medvedev. And if Medvedev gets through, he's playing some good tennis right now. Still like Djokovic.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to debate you on that. I'm just looking at it from somebody has to make this final. And I think even given the ghost in his pass, I might trust him the most. But that's what's beautiful about where we are right now is the depth of this game is that Medvedev could lose next match. He could make it all the way to the final.
Well, the player that I like, if we're talking about who's going to make the final to face Djokovic potentially, I've been high on Stefanos Tsitsipas, and it kind of pains me to say that because he has been such a hothead of a player over the last couple of seasons where you see him and you know that he is right there. He has the skill set. He has, for at least 3-4 sets, has the mindset to win a major, and then he just breaks down and then he just can't push through. Here, I do think that he has the potential to not only make the final, but even come out with a win.
Wow.
So there's 2 features that I took and it was Djokovic to win. And then I took Tsitsipas at 14-1. And yes, Djokovic is 10-2 over Stefanos, but Stefanos is so close. He had 5 sets at 2020 Roland Garros, 5 sets at the 2021 Roland Garros. Those are slower conditions, but I think the conditions right now in Australian Open kind of favor Tsitsipas. Novak Djokovic talked about how the ball themselves are don't have as high of a bounce. It's going to favor a lot of the flat hitters,
Yeah.
and it favors some of the clay courters who can handle long rallies. That's exactly Tsitsipas's game. So I
Mhm.
think the slow court, yeah, you can say that was clay. This is Australian Open. This is hard, but the conditions are kind of a lot more similar than probably what you would
Yeah.
think. Tsitsipas is he's almost there. Tsitsipas is so almost there, and I love how he came out of the gate with the went straight to victory. We saw him last year in previous majors where he had a 5 set against no name players. He's coming into this with some confidence. He's coming into this with some strength. He's getting close.
Yeah, the part about the balls is very accurate. Djokovic has said it's harder to put balls away. People start hitting harder. They might overhit. Tsitsipas never really been susceptible to that. I'm on record. I mean, he's a Greek guy like myself. He loves he has a great game. He is very, very versatile, which I think a lot of the younger players lack at times. It's between the ears, and he seems to be doing and saying all the right things. And the draw is pretty favorable to him. He could get Sinner. He could get Sinner, who he's done very well against. Medvedev would be the match. And up until last year, Medvedev had kind of owned him. Maybe Tsitsipas has turned it around. That would be a fun one. He's done very well in Australia. It has been far and away his hard court, haven where he enjoys playing. And that might speak to the work he puts in the offseason, as we said. So that's a sneaky one I like, because we were talking about this. He's the number 3 seed, and everyone's like, wow, it'd be crazy. I mean, he's playing for number 1 in the world too. I mean, I know Djokovic is a prohibitive favorite, but Tsitsipas could leave Australia as a Grand Slam champion and number 1.
And I do think that Tsitsipas has the variety in his game that can defeat Medvedev in this position. Like I said, I need to see more from Medvedev. I believe his game has just been figured out over the last couple of seasons. This is why he had such a rocky 2022. And unless he adapts, you die. I mean, it's adapted. And so Tsitsipas is the type of player where maybe the weakness of his has been the backhand. He's missing that down the line shot, but it's still aggressive enough to where he can be competitive in these best of 5 tournaments. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing him. I want to see him thrive, and I think the conditions fit him.
Before we go to some speed round, just likes or dislikes to wrap this up. I know we got to talk about Rafa. It's unfortunate with what's gone on with the injury, how his tournament ended. I know the sad there, the defending champion out in the second round to Mackie McDonald announced he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. And, from the future, looking at it, him as a player to wager on, I mean, we're not going to see him at least until maybe the hard court swing, but it's not looking like it's Indian Wells or Miami. It's probably going to be the clay court season. So on one hand, it's good that he is going to rest, get that off season, re-up for where he dominates. But 36 years old is a little different than coming back from an injury at 22, 25, 28 even. So where are you at with Rafa and the unfortunate father time debate that we have to have of, we don't know how much longer it's going to be. And with the injuries mounting up, there's some real concern now that it might not be much longer.
I am at the point where it's hard to not cry, not to want to cry.
Okay.
I ended up buying tickets to see the Carlos Alcaraz versus Nadal exhibition match in early March. Well, now that he's out 6 to 8 weeks, the 8th week is that week that he's supposed to play that exhibition match. And so I don't even know if that's going to still happen, but I bought those tickets because I'm just very much in the belief that 2023 is the season that we see him retire, because a lot happened in 2022. Not only was his injuries a thing and he had the injections in his foot in order to win Roland Garros, he saw his best friend Roger Federer retire. He had a baby. Like, there's just like a lot of off the court situations that, in addition to the injuries, that now he has a new injury.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just father time, it's now life is happening around him. And is he in a position to want to continue? So I bought these tickets for the exhibition match, assuming that this might be the last opportunity that I have to see him, because and then we saw it with the injury that he had in the second round here at Australian Open. When the injury occurred, they panned over to his wife. I have never seen his wife cry. And to me, that was very indicative that maybe the retirement talks have already happened.
Yeah.
And this is not how him and his family want the career to end. You want to go out on a high note, not because your body's forcing you to.
Right. It's a balance of going out because he said he still loves the game. He still loves working hard. He loves the process, not just being a tennis player and all the accolades, but he loves the process of working on something and seeing the reward. So on one hand, I get why on the outside you'd say, why don't you just go out on top, win a major and then call it quits? Well, he still feels good. He still loves the day to day. But the flip side of that is if your body just says, no, this is it. Like you physically can't do this anymore. You have to think about other stuff. I want to see him play as long as, he's able and as long as he's,
But as long as he's doing it healthy too,
yeah,
that when he got the
able to big thing.
injections,
Yeah.
when he got into the injections for Roland Garros just to get through that tournament, that is not sustainable. That is something that is a one and done. Now, how are you going to handle the next 2-3 years? Can you handle the next 2-3 years? Because the type of play that Nadal has is not conducive to longevity in the sport. So what he's already doing now at his age is already so impressive. He likes the long rallies. He likes the 5-hour matches. You will see him down 2 sets and come back in 5. It is just he likes long points.
Yeah.
And it has clearly put wear and tear in his body. He has more miles on court than anybody else on tour. So it's just very difficult for me to see him, one, ever get 100% back to full health. There's just not enough time left in order to do that. I would say assume I am not a doctor, but like maybe 6 months to a year of no playing to really give your body a chance at 100% recovery. And if he's not doing that, you're always just going to be susceptible to re-injuring something.
Well, what I do know is if he's not dominant on clay, that is going to open up for the first time since pre-Nadal. So I think we're going to have to adjust to who is actually going to who's going to start winning on this surface that we just not even pencil, marker, pen. Could be Carlos, another guy coming off of his injury that I want. It's just such a fascinating time for tennis, the good and the bad.
It is.
We've got all these players, jockeying for position still. Pamela Maldonado here on Tennis Channel Inside In. This has been a blast. Before I let you go, just some other quick thoughts on the draw. And, I just want to know what other players you like and maybe dislike. There's a lot of Americans left. Haven't heard you mention any of them. If you kind of have a few that you might think could be, a couple are playing each other. So we have to kind of decipher through that. But who are some players that you've taken an interest in as they're still around in the men's draw?
Big Bo.
Oh, yeah.
How are we not talking about Tiafoe here? I'm really interested in his match against Kachanov. From a betting perspective, it's a pick. So they're saying it's a 50-50 as to who's going to win. I like Tiafoe in this spot because of his return game. He has a solid return game, and Kachanov is a lot of just a big serve. And we've seen Tiafoe, he has variety in his game. That's why he was able to be so competitive against Rafa Nadal last season, because he has the slice, he has the drop shot, and playing against somebody like Kachanov, who pretty much just has like one weapon to his name, he can be very competitive. And so I'm really interested in seeing how deep he can run. Tiafoe had a lot of success in 2022 that I'd like to see him continue on into this season. And so far he has a trajectory to do so. So I'm interested in Tiafoe. As mentioned, I don't think Korda is going to get past Medvedev. But I mean, it's a very interesting time for U.S. men's tennis. I'm not at all entirely surprised that Fritz dropped out early just because he doesn't have a successful record here at Australian Open. He was 9-6 entering this tournament. But now with him gone, I just think that he has better opportunities later on into the year, Taylor Fritz. So I would like to see him back at Indian Wells. Let's see how he does there. He has a good chance here at the US Open. But for this specific tournament, I'm really interested to see how far Tiafoe can go.
The Tiafoe-Kachanov match, fascinating on all fronts. Big Foe has the weapons. He can beat him. I think his fitness has gotten better. His ability to stay locked in has gotten better too. Kachanov is a fighter. That's the one thing I do respect about him the most, is that he doesn't go away. And he can beat players better than him with that mindset, which I love. So that's a fun match. Can't wait for that one. Brooksby Paul, exciting contrast of styles there. And you got to throw in Ben Shelton still, coming in first time out of the country, wins in straight sets and wins basically a road game. And I think that's where his college tennis helped him. He had some Chilean fans that were cheering for their guy. And, obviously he didn't like that. So instead of just, taking it away, he locked in. And there's a lot to like. I don't know what'll happen, but I do think with American men's tennis, the rising tide lifts all boats. And they saw the years that Fritz and Tiafoe had last year. And these guys are saying, well, we got to raise our level. Kind of like you said, the Alcaraz effect. We have to play better.
You have to play better, but it's also the conditions that we talked about earlier. They're kind of suitable for U.S. men's tennis because it's a lot of the flat ball hitters. The ball's not bouncing as high, so it's favoring those who hit the ball flat. So that's why you saw Mackenzie McDonald do well against Nadal. That's why you see Brooksby beat Casper Ruud, because Ruud has too much of a top spin, and that doesn't players like Djokovic, that's why he does so well, because he's fine hitting the ball
Yeah.
flat. So there's still a couple of players here. Cam Norrie even it favors his
Mm.
backhand. So the conditions are very favorable to that of American tennis, American style type of
Yeah.
tennis. So you're seeing them do well. Ben Shelton, I made a mistake of fading him in round 2 with a Nikolai Jari, but it was just because
No, I
he's
get it.
young, first time position. Let's
Yeah.
see what you really got. Well, turns out he has a little bit more than I expected. So
Yeah.
I'll probably be laying away from him. But let's go Tiafoe, because I really think that he also has a really good opportunity. If not only he gets to Kachanov, but I really think that he can also defeat Medvedev.
That's the roughest section. So it opened up for him as well.
Yep.
Pamela Maldonado, this was a blast. Always fun talking tennis with you. Last thing is, I just want an update. How's the fitness life going? And have you actually been approached by any of these tennis players to kind of give them the leg up?
I wish. If anybody needs a personal trainer, I am here. Right now I'm in my off season, so I'm doing nothing but eating a lot of food and lifting really heavy. So
Yeah.
I did a personal best a couple weeks ago. I did a 300-pound deadlift. I am now part of the 300 club, so that's fun. I did a couple reps of a 55-pound pull-up. So I'm definitely getting stronger, and in turn, that's physicality, but like mentally, it really helps you with the betting side too, because now it's like, all right, you have belief, you have confidence, and that's what you need in order to be successful when it comes to sports betting.
It's all impressive stuff. I'm just a little wary of the cold tub stuff. That's where I draw the line. It's too much suffering for one person, but no, it's really impressive. All the stuff that you do. Check Pamela Maldonado out on Yahoo, as a betting analyst. Check out her Aussie Open insights as well, all tournament. Thanks again, Pam, for joining the show. Appreciate having you on Tennis Channel Inside In.
Yeah, thanks for having me.